She stared at me across the kitchen island, her arms crossed, voice sharp enough to cut glass. Let's be real, honey. You need me way more than I need you. I'm the spark in this marriage. Without me, you'd just be some quiet accountant crunching numbers in silence. If you don't start appreciating what I bring to the table, plenty of men would jump at the chance to take your place. I didn't answer. I just held her gaze for a long second, then turned and walked out of the room. The next morning, while she was still asleep, I quietly canceled the joint streaming accounts she used daily, removed her from the premium family phone plan I'd been paying for, transferred the utilities I'd always covered into my name only, and submitted the paperwork to remove her as an authorized user on both my credit cards. When she woke up and inevitably panicked, calling from a neighbor's phone, I answered once. Her voice was already frantic. I said calmly, "You said you'd replace me. Go ahead and find him," and ended the call. Peace settled over the house like fresh snow, thick, clean, and utterly silent. No more true crime podcasts blaring from every speaker at full volume. No more shopping bags piled by the front door like trophies. No more walking on eggshells wondering which version of my wife I'd come home to that night. My savings account finally started climbing instead of free-falling, and I could hear my own thoughts again for the first time in 4 years. To understand how I reached that moment of perfect, icy clarity, you have to know how slowly the trap closed around me. I'm 32, a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. I make good money, comfortable, steady money that lets me sleep at night knowing the mortgage is covered and retirement is on track. Growing up, my family scraped by on one modest income, so stability became everything to me. When I care about someone, I show it by removing worries, by handling the details so they don't have to. My wife, let's call her Lauren, was vibrant in a way that made rooms tilt toward her. She worked part-time as a yoga instructor and spent the rest of her energy building what she called her personal brand online. Fitness reels, morning routines, sponsored smoothie posts. In the beginning, I admired it. She was passionate, disciplined in her own way, and when she turned that bright energy on me, I felt chosen. We met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. She laughed at my dry jokes, asked about my work like it genuinely interested her, and by the end of the night, she was leaning against my shoulder watching the fireworks. 6 months later, we were engaged. A year after that, married. I happily became the foundation so she could build her dreams on top of it. I paid the mortgage on our 3-bedroom house in the quiet suburbs because my income easily qualified and hers didn't. When her aging SUV started breaking down constantly, I traded it in and bought her a new Lexus hybrid. Perfect for content, she said, and I agreed because seeing her excited made me happy. I added her to my phone plan, gave her access to the joint account for household needs, and never questioned the growing list of subscriptions, Peloton, Masterclass, Adobe Suite, multiple beauty boxes. Over time, those household needs quietly shifted into photography equipment, ring lights, wardrobe for sponsored posts, and weekend retreats with her influencer friends. Whenever I gently asked about budgeting, she'd tilt her head and smile that half-sympathetic smile. "Babe, this is an investment. You want me to succeed, right? You always say you believe in me." If I pushed harder, the warmth vanished. She'd go quiet for days, sleep in the guest room, post cryptic quotes about unsupported partners. I'd end up apologizing, reassuring her that, of course, I supported her dreams. I told myself it was temporary, that once her brand took off, things would balance out. But the gratitude faded. She stopped thanking me for handling bills, started rolling her eyes when I talked about work. "Numbers all day must be so draining," she'd say, not unkindly, but in a way that made me feel small. She began comparing me out loud to the husbands of her online friends. Men who surprised their wives with spontaneous trips to Tulum, who hyped every post in the comments, who apparently never complained about money. The real fracture started about 8 months ago. Her follower count had climbed to respectable numbers, but the sponsorship checks were still inconsistent. She grew restless. Our conversations turned into negotiations. She'd want new furniture for better backdrops. I'd suggest waiting until the next bonus. She'd want to fly first class to a brand retreat in Miami. I'd offer to book economy and use points. Each time, I'd eventually give in because the alternative was days of cold distance and subtle online shade that our mutual friends would notice. The night everything crystallized was a Thursday. I just wrapped a brutal tax season crunch, 14-hour days for weeks straight. I came home bone-tired, tie loosened, dreaming of a quiet beer and early sleep. Instead, I walked into the living room to find delivery bags everywhere and Lauren filming herself unboxing what looked like thousands of dollars in activewear. She barely glanced up. "Hey, perfect timing. You can help me shoot some transitions." I rubbed my eyes. "Lauren, it's almost 10. I'm exhausted. And how much did all that cost?" She paused the camera, irritation flickering across her face. "It was a collab, but yeah, I had to buy some pieces up front. It'll pay off." I looked at the bank app on my phone. A pending charge for over $2,000. My stomach dropped. We agreed no big purchases without talking first. Tax season drained the cushion. We're supposed to be rebuilding it. She set the phone down slowly, the influencer mask slipping. "Here we go again. Always about money with you. I'm not trying to fight. I'm asking we stick to the plan." She stood, hands on hips. "You know what your problem is? You're scared of abundance. You think small. My friends' husbands invest in their wives' visions. They don't nickel and dime every opportunity. Your friends' husbands also have trust funds or side businesses. We have a mortgage and one income right now." Her laugh was sharp. "One income? That's your choice to keep me small. I'm building something huge, and you're dragging your feet every step." The argument escalated fast. I tried to stay reasonable, but exhaustion made my voice tighter than usual. Finally, she stepped close, eyes blazing. "Listen carefully," she said, voice low and deliberate. "This marriage works because of what I bring: energy, beauty, inspiration. Men notice me every day. I get offers constantly. Without me, you'd go back to your quiet little life, eating takeout alone. No spark, no passion. So maybe start acting grateful. Because if you keep treating me like an expense instead of an asset, I'll find someone who sees my worth." She waited for me to fold, to apologize like always. Instead, something inside me went perfectly still. The exhaustion, the resentment, the years of quiet compromises. They all aligned into one clear thought. She had just defined our marriage as transactional. And transactions can be ended. I didn't argue. I nodded once, turned, and went upstairs. She called after me, confused by the lack of fight, but I closed the bedroom door softly and lay awake planning that I waited until she was deeply asleep, around 1 a.m, then slipped downstairs. I opened my laptop and made a list of every financial thread connecting us that was under my control. The utilities, the streaming services, the phone plan, the credit cards, even the home security system and lawn service. I didn't touch the joint savings or mortgage, that would come later through proper channels, but everything discretionary, everything she'd taken for granted. I prepared to sever at 6:30 the next morning. I showered silently, dressed sharply, and packed an overnight bag with clothes and important documents. Before leaving, I moved her Lexus keys from the hook by the door to my briefcase. The car was titled in my name alone. Her credit hadn't qualified for the loan, so I'd signed solo. I drove it to my office parking garage and left it there, safe behind the gate. I spent the morning at a quiet cafe near work, sipping coffee and executing the plan with methodical calm. First the credit cards, removed her as authorized user on both. Then the phone carrier, suspended her line for lost device. I canceled the joint streaming logins, changed passwords on everything from Disney Plus to the New York Times subscription she read daily. I called the electric and water companies, requested the accounts be split and hers transferred to a new billing name effective immediately. Each representative asked if I was sure. Each time I confirmed.By 10, the dominoes were falling. I turned my phone off and focused on actual work for a few hours, an unfamiliar luxury. When I powered it back on around noon, the screen exploded with notifications. Missed calls climbing into the teens. Texts that started confused and quickly turned desperate. Where's the car? I have a shoot at noon. My cards aren't working. What did you do? I can't even call an Uber. My phone says no service. Then the call from an unfamiliar number. I answered. Hello? What the hell have you done? Her voice cracked with panic. My phone's dead. The cards are declined, and the car is gone. This is insane. Take a breath, I said quietly. Don't tell me to take a breath. You're trying to punish me because I told you the truth last night. This is controlling. This is abuse. You told me you'd replace me if I didn't behave properly, I replied, voice steady. You said I needed you more. I'm simply stepping aside so you can prove it. Silence stretched. Then softer. I was angry. I didn't mean it like that. You were very clear, Lauren. You defined our roles. I'm the provider, you're the spark. If the spark can shine elsewhere, it should. Please, she whispered. Just come home. We can talk. Turn everything back on. I'll be better, I promise. I'm not coming home tonight. And no, I won't turn things back on. You have options. Use them. You're really doing this? Over one fight. It's not one fight. It's 4 years of hearing my contributions reduced to a paycheck while yours were treated as priceless. You drew the line last night. I'm respecting it. She started crying real panic sobs. I can't even get to my parents' house. I have no way to pay for anything. Then reach out to one of those men who notice you every day, I said. I'm sure they'll help. I ended the call, blocked the neighbor's number, and for good measure blocked her socials too. No anger surged through me, just profound relief. Over the next days, I stayed in a comfortable extended stay hotel near work. I hired a lawyer to start formal separation paperwork. The house was in both names, but I'd continue paying the mortgage until we sold or refinanced. Fair was fair, but everything else discretionary ended that morning. Her friends descended, of course. Texts from people I'd hosted at barbecues, people whose weddings I'd paid for gifts. They called me cold, heartless, accused me of financial abuse. I replied to one, the loudest, with simple facts. She declared the marriage transactional and threatened to leave. I accepted the terms. Crickets followed. Word filtered back slowly. The men who'd slid into her DMs with fire emojis weren't interested in funding yoga retreats or covering suspended utilities. The collaborations dried up when brands realized her engagement had plummeted amid the chaos. She moved back with her parents 3 hours away after the utility shutoffs began. I sold the Lexus at a small loss, paid off the loan, and bought myself a practical sedan that felt like freedom. The extra money each month, nearly $3,000, went straight into investments and a travel fund. I started running again, cooked meals without background noise, read books I'd meant to for years. 4 months later, I bumped into her at a downtown coffee shop. I was meeting friends. She was alone, laptop open, hair in a simple ponytail instead of the polished waves. She looked up, startled, then offered a tentative smile. You look happy, she said quietly. I am. She fidgeted with her cup. I've been thinking about everything. I was awful. I took you for granted in ways I didn't even see at the time. The guys out there, they're not like you. Nobody steps up like you did. I waited. I miss us, she continued, voice small. Maybe we could try again? I've changed. Therapy, new job. I'm covering my own bills now. I studied her face. The beauty was still there, but the entitlement had thinned. Yet I felt nothing, no pull, no nostalgia. Only clarity. I'm glad you're doing better, I said. Truly. But I needed that night to see how uneven everything had become. You were right about one thing, I did need you. I needed you to show me exactly where my boundaries should have been years earlier. Once I learned that lesson, I didn't need the dynamic anymore. Her eyes glistened. So that's it. That's it. Take care of yourself, Lauren. I picked up my coffee and joined my friends at the corner table. Laughter rose easily. Outside, the city moved on, bright and full of possibility. Some transactions end exactly when they're supposed to.